This show contains discussion of general investment strategies for information purposes only and should not be construed as investment advice. Diversification cannot eliminate the risk of investment losses. It's time for Your Money Puzzle Podcast, with good conversation and realistic solutions to the money puzzle problems we all face every day. Now let's get things started with our hosts. Here's Robert Edgin and Brian Johnson.
Hi there, hello, and welcome to the Money Puzzle Podcast. I am Robert Edgin, and I'll be your guide for the ride for the next few minutes. This is the place for candid conversations about money, finance, investing, and all of the other pieces of the money puzzle that you need to figure out so you can have the financial confidence you deserve and the
future that you dream of.
That's right. I've got my good friend, business partner, and all around one of the 15 smartest guys that I met last week. No, I'm just joking. One of the smartest guys I know, Brian Johnson, on the show with me today. And Brian, even though we can't be together, your presence is so big that I feel like you're standing right here with me.
Am I filling the screen?
You are filling the screen. So we are at our offices, which is nice, but we're just not together, which is a little sad.
It is.
And so, but it is great to see you, even if it is only virtually. And let me ask you, I mean, now that the country's opening up, our offices are opening up, are you glad to be back in your office, or would you rather be at home?
Both.
Both.
It's easier. I get more work done at the office, but it's nice to be home with the family.
So, yes, I actually get more work done at home because there are so many distractions. I've got a large office. There's people coming and going, so I get way more distractions here. But I am very, very glad to have the office open, to be back around, to be, getting out of the house more. My wife, on the other hand, she is an introvert at heart. And I mean, I swear having the country shut down was like a 2-month, it was like the best possible life, because my wife loves being at home. It's like her safe, happy place. And if it was up to her, we'd probably never go out again. We'd just hang out there together for the rest of our lives.
Well, with homeschooling, they're always home. Except my wife likes to get out, but the kids are like, this is fantastic. We don't have to go anywhere.
If we were homeschooling, I think that we probably would have, I don't know. Actually, I don't know how you guys do it as it is, but we talked about this so often, how blessed and fortunate we felt to be empty nesters at the same time as the quarantine, because it was just a peaceful 2-month stay at home.
Right.
So pretty easy. So, all right. I'm excited to get into today's show. It is still May. This will be coming out actually the first week in June. So we're getting into, a little bit of summer months, a little bit of warm months. We're finally getting out of the office, which is great. But I'm excited to get into this conversation today. And we're following up. It's the second part of the 6 P's of financial success. So Brian, I was without you last week. We talked about the internal P's. We talked about your person, your peers, and your process. And today we're going to talk about the external P's. You need to plan, preserve, and protect. Am I right?
That's right.
Yeah, those 3 things. So we got a lot to get into. I can't wait to get into it. But before we get into it, Brian, I do a lot of reading and research, and I come across a lot of different news headlines and articles that I find pretty fascinating. So I thought we would take a minute to look at some news.
All right.
All right, this week's news article comes to us from Reuters.com, and the headline reads, Brian, Clawing Back Normality. The Bangkok Cat Cafe reopens after virus shutdown. So let me read this to you here real quick. We'll see what you think. It says, as Thailand's capital cautiously reopens, many restaurants that were shuttered over the coronavirus fears, the feline employees of the Catterday Cafe are now back at work. The few dozen friendly cats who are on staff typically lounge around the cafe, breaking up nap time to saunter with human customers for snuggles and belly rubs.
Oh, geez.
The friendly furballs give much-needed outside contact to the Thai people who have been mostly confined to home during the weeks of this lockdown. They talked to somebody who said earlier, we could not go out anywhere, which makes us a bit stressed out. But since we can come to meet the cats, we feel more at ease and relaxed. So, Brian, have you ever been to a cat cafe restaurant?
No. We didn't even go to a dog cafe restaurant in Greece or in Italy, so no.
We do have a new dog cafe just right up the street from here, but you
Kibbles and bits.
You have to eat your dog. It's called the pub dog, but you have to eat with your dogs outside. Kibbles and Bits would have been a good one.
Yeah,
They might be trademarked or something. But in Thailand, in case you were worried, in case you need some getting out of the house and a way to relax, no fears. The Catterday Cafe is open. All right, that is the news for this week. If you'd like to see the link to that article, it does go on, and because they are sad because now they can only have 50% of the people in there. The good news is, Brian, they did not have to reduce their cat employees by 50%. They were allowed to keep 100% of cat employees.
Right. Oh, that's good. Keep the mice population down.
It's good for the economy. So, all right, that's it for the news. Let's go ahead and get to this week's hot topic. We're getting into the second half of the 6 P's of financial success. These are the external things that you have to deal with: your plan, your preservation, your protection. So let's start with a plan. And I thought the first thing that we should do is talk about, what is the definition of a plan? What does it really mean? And then we'll get into why you should have one. So I looked up on dictionary.com, and actually there was a noun and a verb definition, which I thought both made a lot of sense. A noun for a plan is an intention or decision about what one is going to do. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the verb is to decide on and arrange in advance. So if we would put them together, it's an intention or decision about what one is going to do, and then deciding on and making arrangements in advance. Brian, why is having a plan important?
Well, the first thing that I think of when having a plan is goals, is to keep you focused on your long-term goal. Plain and simple, I think.
Yeah, because a goal is important, but there actually is an expression: a goal without a plan is just a wish. Right. So yes, you need to have a goal, but if you don't have a way to accomplish that goal or a plan, if we don't have that verb, deciding on and arranging in advance what to do, then your goal isn't really anything more than wishful thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I also, if we're going to be talking about cool expressions, I like the one, people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan.
Yeah.
Right. So
we've heard that for years. Absolutely.
We have. And Brian, who said it?
John Beckley.
Now, did you know that before looking at the notes? Because honestly,
no, you sent it to me. That's how I knew it. I've heard the expression forever, but I never knew who said it.
I thought Benjamin Franklin said it, but I actually went and researched it. He said, people don't prepare to fail, they fail to prepare.
Okay. That's the same thing.
Pretty darn close. But
it sounds like John Beckley kind of stole it a little bit.
He tweaked it, but if you look, he actually gets the credit for people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. That goes to John Beckley. So way to go, John, whoever the heck you are. So, and another thing regarding plan, Money Magazine, this is to me why having a plan is such an important thing to do. Money Magazine wrote an article, and it said, you are more likely to retire wealthy if you do this one thing. And what is that one thing?
Have a plan.
Have a plan. It's so crazy. They wrote an entire article in Money Magazine about the one thing that most wealthy retirees have, and it is a financial plan.
85% of people who have a retirement plan are confident that they're going to be able to retire when they want to, compared to 28% of the people who are not confident at all that they're going to have a plan. It's crazy when you think about it.
That is kind of, 85% of people who have a plan are confident that they'll retire. Only 28% who don't have a plan are confident that they'll retire. That leaves another 72% who aren't confident that should just go get a plan.
Well, right. But even still at 28%, I'm confident. But do you really know?
Knowing where you're going and what is important to you allows you to make better decisions about what to focus on and then also what to ignore. Right. So, having a plan just helps you make better decisions. So that brings up the next question. Brian, what should you plan?
when I think about that, the financial side of things, the long-term goals is the big one, right? Like for me, I like working. I like coming to work. I sitting home for 8 weeks. I got very, very bored, and I got to thinking with all that, saying, what is that going to be like when I retire? So, I mean, my plan, I've said this for years, is age 70. That's when I plan on retiring. So that's one goal, one long-term goal that I have. Paying off the house is another one. Having a couple new cars when I go into retirement is another goal. But keeping those in mind will keeps me on track when I send in my monthly investment check, when I make an extra house payment, that type of thing, to keep me focused on the long term.
So retirement is obviously a big one. You said
Yep.
for you, it's age 70. But when it comes to retirement, that is a question. When do you want to retire? So,
Right.
I mean, knowing that and having that age and having that number, then you can figure out how many years you've got to go. But retirement is one. Yeah, debt payoff for a lot of people. That's a long-term goal. When should your house be paid off? When should your cars, or when will they be paid off? Right.
Exactly.
Any big purchase that's a few years out can really be something that you should and can plan for.
My wife wants to have a house in Arizona so she can go down there in the winter. So that's one of those things that we just started planning for.
Yeah. While you're still here working?
Yes.
Yes. I figured as much. How about college tuition? I mean, same thing. If you're younger and you're listening to this and you've got a 1-year-old, well, how much college do you want to provide? But that's a long-term, big financial goal that you are far more likely to achieve if you have a plan. So you should plan for anything that's long-term. You should plan for anything that's a big purchase, because like you said, having a plan will do quite a few things for you, like help you stay focused.
Stay focused. That's the biggest thing, I think.
Let's talk about some action steps to having a plan. The first thing I think you should do is start simple, which is just writing down your long-term goals. So some examples of those we've been talking about. If you haven't bought a house yet and that's in your plan, when would you like to buy a house?
Yeah. Or when do you want to pay it off is another great one.
That's right. That's a long-term goal. If you already own a house, how about what age would you like to retire? That is a long-term goal that should be written down. Or the kids' college tuition. And there, questions to ask is, do I want to contribute some or half or all to their college education, right?
Well, and to which college?
That's public or private.
Yeah.
That's right. Because if you're planning for a public college versus a private college, you are saving two very different amounts, right? So how do you know how much to save? You have a long-term plan. So that's, number one. Another one, Brian, that you love is set up a monthly budget.
Yes, it's my favorite one. How do you know how to pay your house off, how to pay credit cards off, how to pay cars off, or how much you can save each and every month to meet your age requirement goal for retirement?
Yeah, and Brian's simple budget, in fact, I wrote it down. It's 5 words. In fact, we're going to call this the BSB. This is Brian's simple budget. Spend less than you make.
There you go.
Right. So, okay. How about another just easy thing as far as planning goes? Action step is to work on an emergency fund.
That's
Even
right.
though that is not actually putting a plan together, having an emergency fund protects your long-term plans. It protects your long-term goals, because if you have to go buy a new refrigerator or a transmission and you have to stop contributing to your retirement because you had no emergency fund, that messes up your long-term goals.
It does. Yep.
Right. So, and then ultimately, once you have a plan, you need to stay focused and stick with it. But to get a plan, Brian, what is the best way for folks to get a plan?
It's to hire someone like us to help them create it.
So that's right. People who actually do it all the time, for lots of people who can understand what people are trying to get to and the best ways to get them there more efficiently.
And it's simple and is written.
So, okay. All right. So that was the first P, which is to plan. The second one is to preserve. And they're in this order for a reason. You need to understand what you are shooting for, where you are headed. So you have to plan that out.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of your tomorrows. Well, what about your todays? You need to do some preservation. You need to preserve your family's lifestyle. So I looked up the definition of preserve from dictionary.com. It says to maintain something in its original or existing state, to keep safe from harm or injury. Okay, is to preserve. So we talk about all the time with folks, you need to preserve your family's lifestyle, or in other words, you need to keep it in its original or existing state. So preserving your lifestyle helps keep emotional tragedies, the loss of a loved one, as an example, a breadwinner, from becoming a financial tragedy because now you've lost their income, because those financial tragedies compound the emotional tragedy. Am I right, Brian? What is important to families?
Well, right. I mean, like in my case, being out in the country, having horses, having a few pigs once in a while, having chickens, having a nice house, but living out in the country. So one of the things that we do is we cut down dead trees all the time on our property. We fire mitigated to preserve that part of our lifestyle, because if the fire came through and it obliterated our home, I mean, that's a huge financial step back.
So
even though it's insured, it's still a step back because you're not living there anymore.
So, well, in your lifestyle, where do you want to go and travel to? What kind of home do you want to live in? What hobbies do you want to have?
I want a Porsche.
So, well, okay.
That's one lifestyle item that I would like to have at some point.
So so if you already were in a Porsche, it would probably be important to make sure that you could keep your Porsche even if your wife didn't make it home from work tomorrow.
Right.
If something happens to you, do you want your kids to have to move to a different school? Do you want them to have to change to a, different home, move back to Michigan to be around family? All of these things, this is what makes up your lifestyle.
Yeah. One of the things that I did specifically for this reason was I really increased Aaron's life insurance when we decided to homeschool. Because one of the things that's important to me about that lifestyle is that, not that I would stay at home and teach them myself, but I could hire somebody to come in the house and do that.
Yeah, because like you said, that is important to your family. Homeschooling is something you guys decided that you wanted to do in a lifestyle that you wanted to have and provide for your children. So now if you didn't make it home, or Aaron didn't make it home, and you didn't have the finances to maintain that lifestyle, then they might have to go to public school. And that's not what you want for your family.
No.
So, all right. So, what are the things that we need to preserve? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is your income. You need paychecks for living and you need playchecks for fun, but you have to preserve that lifestyle of everyone in the household. Brian, what else do we need to preserve?
Well, I mean, think not necessarily income, but when you're in your retirement, there's some things that you need to preserve, like your assets, and that's where long-term care comes into play.
That's right, because if you have to spend down your assets on long-term care, your spouse cannot preserve her lifestyle or his lifestyle, because when you spend down money, you're probably spending down all of your money for long-term care. So that's a good one. And then the last thing is a legacy. If you want to have your legacy preserved, leaving funds to family members, to colleges, to whatever it is that you support.
Right. Whatever charity
you support. So let's talk about some action steps to preserve your family's lifestyle. Brian, what do you think?
Well, first and foremost, like I said, is setting up your life insurance properly.
Getting the life insurance is taken care of is a big foundational element to a good financial future. Really, and what a life insurance does is it makes sure that if you don't, you have these things that you have committed to doing for your family. I have committed to paying these bills, to providing this life, to putting this money into our family's retirement account for my spouse and I. So if I do not make it home, then that life insurance pays those things. It preserves that for my spouse, my family.
Yeah. The other big thing that I did when I started this business is I bought a disability policy for, especially being self-employed. If I become disabled, where's the funds coming from? So I bought a disability policy to take care of office expenses and income.
So absolutely. So it's not just life insurance. You might want to look at disability insurance, right? That's another thing that will help preserve that lifestyle by protecting your income. And if you're over age 55, but really I'd say anytime in your 50s, it's not a bad idea to look at long-term care. The closer you get to 60, the more expensive it becomes. But having a long-term incident will affect not just your lifestyle, but definitely your spouse's lifestyle. It could even affect your children's lifestyle if they're grown, because they might have to take care of you.
That's right.
So you're preserving their lifestyle, even if they don't live in the house with you. You might not want, or they might not want you to come live in their basement. Brian, any other action steps that you can think of for preserving your lifestyle?
One thing that we did not talk about, especially for spouses, is your estate plan.
So estate planning, absolutely. As far as the legacy goes, right, that is how we help preserve that lifestyle as well. So as you get older, well, and same is true with a will. If you're younger, you've got children, if you've got assets that you want to make sure get set up properly, a will, a trust, but that gets into your estate planning as well to make sure you preserve that legacy and that lifestyle for the next generation. So then that leads us to the third P, which is protect. We talked about plan, we talked about preserve. Now let's talk about protect. The definition of protect is to keep safe from harm or injury. So what are we talking about here? Really, we're talking about our insurance coverage or different insurance policies and coverages, right?
Yeah. The big one I think of is having an auto accident. We talked about that earlier today. If you had a severe auto accident, what can that do to your assets?
So yes, why do you need to protect your assets? Because if all you ever do is build them and focus on making them, bigger, that's great. You need that for the future. But one serious car accident or something that jeopardizes those means you've only done half of the job. If you're not protecting your assets and only building them, you're leaving yourself exposed, right? Yep. And it's your assets that really allow all of your plans for the future to work.
That's right.
So you have to protect them. So when we're talking about what assets need to be protected, we're really talking about our liability, which, liability is something when you are liable, you are responsible, then you have to cover the damages that come from the things you are responsible for, right?
That's right.
So, when it's a car accident, you've got to cover people's medical, rehabilitation, work loss, pain and suffering, plus fixing the things that you damaged. I know we were talking about this earlier, but we both know the story about the client who came in and they had state minimum liability limits, which in Colorado is $25,000 if you hurt one person, $50,000 if you hurt more than one person. They also had a new 16-year-old driver that was listed on their policy. We looked over their coverages as a company and we said, holy crap, you have some serious exposure here because you got over $1 million in the bank and only $25,000 to fix somebody up if you hurt one person. So unfortunately, what happens, the 16-year-old is in a horrendous accident, coming back down from a ski trip. The 16-year-old dies, which is an emotional tragedy. But the second part of that is not only did he die, but he put 6 other people in the hospital, and there was over $1 million in medical and rehabilitation and work loss that had to be paid out. Now, fortunately, because the proper protection was put into place, the insurance company paid out all of those, all of those dollars. But think if those parents had to now come up with $1 million, and it was really close to 1.5, $1.5 million to take care of those things that they were responsible for because their son had an accident, how that would have compounded that emotional tragedy.
Oh, yeah. Well, that reminds me, so might as well mention it since you had alluded to it, was an umbrella policy is one of the cheapest ways to add a whole bunch of liability protection for your driving and for your house. And one of the things that we always recommend is you always want to keep your liability limits up and above your net worth. So if you have a $1.5 million net worth, let's say, and in Colorado your home is not protected in the lawsuit, then you should have at least $2 million in coverage.
Yeah, whatever your net worth is. So that's a great action step there, is whatever your net worth is, you should have more liability coverage than your net worth. Uninsured motorist coverage or uninsured motorist damage, that's another one that you need to protect, because it's not just you hitting other people, it's other people hitting you. And even though in Colorado, where we're at, as an example, if they do the damage, they're responsible. If they don't have any money, they don't have any money. So now your medical rehabilitation, work loss, pain and suffering, yes, your insurance company will go after those folks. They will sue them to go get that money back. But your uninsured motorist is how you protect that bodily injury coverage, is how you protect from that money having to come out of your own assets. Because even if they go after and sue somebody with no money, maybe they're going to garnish their wages for the next 40 years, right? You're still not going to be where you were. So you need to have uninsured motorist coverage as well. So what are your biggest assets that you need to protect, Brian?
Your home is one, right? Any non-retirement accounts, your non-retirement investment accounts for sure. A brokerage account is an example. You need to protect that sort of stuff because those are all subject, at least in Colorado, all subject to a lawsuit.
Yeah. Your cars, I mean, those are big assets. Your income really is your biggest asset. And what protecting all of these other things do and having the right liability limits does for you is it ultimately protects your income, because if you don't have enough insurance coverage to pay things out or money in the bank to pay it out, then they're going to garnish your wages, at least they are here in the state of Colorado, decide how much you get to keep, and the rest goes to the party that you injured.
Yeah, I can't imagine letting somebody else determine how much money I can keep. Pass that risk on to somebody else.
Pass that risk on to somebody else. That's right, which is exactly what insurance policies do. So really the action steps for the protect is you need to review your insurance coverage.
Yes, and then uninsured motorist bodily injury is one of those things that is huge in the fact that, 20% of people? Isn't that the number these days? 20% of people are driving.
I think in Colorado, it's 17.5% of people have no insurance.
Yeah, and so with that, if I'm injured because somebody hit me in a car accident and they don't have insurance, man, do I want to pay that out of my pocket? The answer is no. I mean, my insurance company with uninsured motorist bodily injury will take care of that underneath that coverage. It also includes pain and suffering. You can put in there loss of paycheck, that type of stuff too. And so really increasing that coverage, like for myself, I carry $1 million in coverage for that.
Well, 17.5% have no insurance, but of the other 82.5% that do, I believe that around 50% of them have the state minimums. So it's $25,000.
Right.
How far does that go?
Yeah. Well, the other thing too that most people don't know, uninsured motorist bodily injury covers you in somebody else's car. So when I ride with Rob, I'm covered underneath my own policy and as a pedestrian. So if I was riding my bike on the road and I got hit, or if I was walking down the sidewalk and the car came up on the sidewalk because they were texting and hit me, I still have coverage for that.
Yeah. So on your auto insurance, you need to review your bodily injury and your uninsured motorist bodily injury. You also need to determine if you need full coverage or liability on your car. Because if your car is a big asset, if it's worth $25,000 and you have liability only on it, and well, if you have a loan, you have to have full coverage. But if you don't have a loan, you crash that car, you're out $25,000. It's easier to pay, an extra $70 a month and pass that risk on to the insurance company. But your home insurance, you need to review your liability limit, right? You need to review and make sure that if it burned down, you have enough to put it back, right? And if you're in an apartment and if the place burns down, do you have enough insurance to put back all of your TV, clothes, furniture, right? Everything from your silverware to your underwear. If you add it all up, it might cost you $20,000 to put it all back. Pass that risk on to the insurance company. Insurance reviews take 20 minutes a year, right? I mean, it's no big deal. And if you're working with a good professional insurance agent, then they're going to want to do this and make sure that you're up to date anyways. That's why we have a whole insurance team that takes care of those things for, Brian and I, because, we're focused on the investments, the financial, but the insurance is just as important. So we have a team that takes care of those things. So last week we did the internal P's. This week we talked about how to plan, how to preserve, and how to protect. You combine those 6 P's together, you really have the 6 P's needed for financial success throughout your entire life. So if you've not looked at yours, there has not been a better time to do it than right now. You can reach out to either Brian and I. In fact, I've got a link below this directly to our calendar if you want to schedule a quick 15-minute financial discovery session. We're just going to have a chat with you and talk about what it is you're trying to accomplish, where it is you want to go, and then the tools that you've got to get there. Until next time, be safe, stay healthy, go have some fun, and go do something to improve your money puzzle. Your future self will thank you for it.
Registered representative of and securities offered through Securities Management and Research, Inc., SMNR. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through BFC Planning, Inc. Edgen Insurance and Financial Services, Johnson Financial Services, SMNR, American National Family of Companies, and BFC Planning are independent entities. There are risks involved with investing which may include market fluctuation and possible loss of principal value. Particular investments may not be suitable for certain situations. Carefully consider the risks and possible consequences involved prior to making an investment decision. Our firm does not provide legal or tax advice. Be sure to consult with your own legal and tax advisors before taking any action that may have tax implications.